I was able to literally more than double my salary, pivoting careers. There's no exaggeration. There's no, I didn't really think, it was possible, until it happened because, I just wasn't familiar. I can stand here and say truthfully that, that's exactly what happened.
I welcome Rodney Stark. Rodney, how are you?
Can't complain. I can't complain one bit. How you doing?
No, you can't complain, man, because you just got an awesome new job opportunity, which we're going to get into. But Rodney, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself? Tell people where you're from and what you're doing for work right now.
Absolutely. So my name is Rodney Stark. I'm 33 years old. I'm from Columbus, Georgia. And my path to this point has been I would like to call it the scenic route. 14 years, I've mainly been working in healthcare. Anything from a transporter to a medical assistant, to an orderly in the operating room assistant. And now I'm in a anesthesia tech too.
Kinesiology, hanging around hospitals, doing whatever it was that you were doing or are doing, not the right path. Like, what made you think that that wasn't it? And then what made you think construction?
Originally, I wanted to become a physician. And again, that thought of, okay, what's the end goal? What am I going to be doing on a day-to-day basis? Long story less long, I learned a lot about the pharmaceutical industry that a lot of it I just didn't agree with. I didn't really feel like I would be solving the problem, more so just kind of putting a Band-Aid on it. Again, thinking about the end goal, going through my career, I think a lot about purpose. I think a lot about like, okay, the end goal is to graduate college, you know, get a loan, buy a house, have the white picket fence, a family, and go that route. I thought to myself that I wanted something a bit more permanent and a bit more secure. So that's when I got the idea and the inspiration to build my own house. And so that's when I guess the first seed, was planted to point me in the direction of construction project management. Because then the next thought is, okay, how do I actually build a house? How do I actually get this accomplished? What does it take? Okay, I'm learning about different trades. I'm learning about excavating. I'm learning about, just very fundamental step one, step two, step three, how to build a house. Now, while I'm kind of figuring this out and clarifying this end goal for myself, I'm also trying to find, my own career path and what I wanted to pivot into to be a bit more flexible with, how often I moved around, where I was located. And that led me to CourseCareers specifically. And I think in about 2023, I kid you not, I was just scrolling through my email and I got an alert from CourseCareers that there was a construction project management certificate on there. And so I was like, this is perfect. Like, this is a course. This would definitely be something that I would want to check out. And so that brought me into the construction project management course and your course. And from there, took the course and started fishing.
So it's, and just to be clear, I think part of where you were at with your previous career path was like you weren't making a ton of money, right? And then you were about to start a family, which, congratulations. Way late, congratulations, because I think your daughter's like maybe even almost a year old now.
Yes.
But for a lot of people out there, that's a big jump. Like when you're kind of at the stage of life where you want to start a family and you don't really know what to do, and making a career change is like huge. It's like you said, the scenic route. That's a way of saying like you're 30 and trying to figure out like still what you want to do. Talk to me about, when you found that. And, I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, there's the free intro course, right? That people can go look. What did you think when you saw that? So like construction was an idea because you wanted to build a house and you kind of had this vision for what you wanted to build, with your family. Were you sold before you even got to that video? Or, What did you think about that intro video, especially now in retrospect that you've had a ton of interviews and you've actually, got a couple offers and landed a job?
Right. Honestly, it was one of those things where I was sold before I even saw the intro video. Because I realized how difficult it was to, I guess, learn about construction from the management side. There's a ton of different YouTube videos on how to put, things together, how to, make pour concrete for a back porch, if you want to, and, a bunch of different ways to go about doing that. But, um, the course opened my eyes to just how much is required in order to manage a project, from uh, permits, inspections, contracts, insurance types, you name it. Even those soft skills, that some of the things that your course talked about, extreme ownership, and you know, I like the fact in the course you also really really emphasize communication. And it's just one of those things that again you're not going to Google's not going to tell you that. There are some things that you know Google University or YouTube University is just not going to cover with that level of detail. And that's what I appreciated about the course. So yeah, I was sold, before I, before I even saw the intro video, and even more so coming out of it, which is coming out of it, I felt far, far more confident, than I did, before taking that course. And even in the interviews, I felt that way.
When you were taking the course, now I can tell you right now, and this isn't me like coaching an answer.
Right.
When I first met you, because I try to meet with everybody when they finish the course, right? And just like you and I met several times over the last few months, I was super impressed by what you retained. Like, I was like, wow, this dude, I mean, it's 40 hours, but some people do it in a couple of weeks. Some people do it in a couple of months. Some people really take their time with it. Some people are already in the industry and they just take it as they need it for whatever they're doing. Right. And I don't know that there's ever a goal to finish, but they're just using it to fill the gaps in what they're doing now. How did you feel about the content and like the ability to take it in and really absorb it to then use in an interview?
Like we talked about, I don't have any familiarity with the industry itself. So I don't really have a metric to go off of as far as, how competent am I? But luckily I have that goal, that life goal to build my own house. And that was a metric that I used to kind of self reflect on my own competency. Like, okay, when I get done with this chapter, do I better understand, at least conceptually, how to build a house? And I absolutely did. It's things that not only apply to kind of going back to another motivation why I pivoted industries. Working in the hospital, when I clock out, there's no use for my skills in the real world. Going through your course, I started realizing that these are skills that not only apply in the construction industry, not only apply in the goal of building my own house, but just life in general, just general business, just general communication, and I guess to scale it out a bit, just project management. Whatever the project may be, whether it's setting a budget for fixing your own car and a schedule for yourself, and looking into those things. As I was going through the course, I felt myself become more confident in just that general area. So I felt more confident going into the interview, being able to communicate from that perspective in general. And the added, I guess, meat and potatoes was the actual trades, the actual, jargon, uh, site planning, looking at the specs and, going through submittals and schedule building, Gantt chart views, things like that, that really, really added on, that extra level of detail to where, moving into the interviews, I really felt like there shouldn't be anything that they throw at me that, kind of catches me off guard. I felt, supremely confident going into the interviews, but, again, even with interviews, it takes a while to, get more concise, get more efficient, with the answers and, get straight to the point. And, that was another thing that I developed.
Listen, I've never had anybody tell me that, the course actually makes you more competent at life, but I totally get it. What I think is funny is you were enticed by building your own home, but that is not what you land a job in doing. And this course is not, I mean, it applies to residential building, but it definitely is, commercial building focused. And
Absolutely.
like the company that you're going to, you don't have to name the company. But what are some of the things that they do? Because it's not homes. They do some pretty big stuff,
Right.
right?
Right. They have three divisions, and one of the divisions focuses on like state buildings, courthouses, municipalities, prisons. They have another division that focuses on some pretty, let's just say, some of the biggest retail company headquarters. They have another division that focuses on U.S. embassies and U.S. consulates. So we're talking some very, very big, and also important, projects. And I think that's another thing that drew me into the construction industry also is that, I started getting the impression that, wow, I'm going to have my fingerprints on some pretty important projects. These aren't projects that, you just walk away from and you never see again. Like you could very well drive past for the next 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, drive past a project that, you actually have your fingerprints on. You were actually a part of putting in the air. Um, that's fulfilling. That's fulfilling. I think anybody who is purpose oriented or purpose driven would be enticed by that.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that they also do, um, that I noticed on the company's website that you're going to is mission critical, which is another word for data centers, which is like the hot girl at the party. Like that's what everybody's talking about right now. It's always on the
Yeah.
news and funding and people are talking about energy availability and stuff like that. And the funny thing about that stuff is I think the bar is very low to get into residential building. It is
Right.
very high for a mission critical or hospital work.
Yeah.
Those sectors are kind of chicken or the egg. It's like you're not allowed to work on it unless you've worked on it before, but you can't work on it if you've never worked on it. Like it's,
Right.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's hard, and you have to get in with a company like that. And those are, in other words, what am I trying to say? Those are the most sophisticated construction projects on the planet.
Right.
And they just hired Rodney, who like educated in kinesiology, doing patient transport in hospitals and like working in hospitals with zero construction experience.
Absolutely.
And again, without the degree, right? But what you did was you took the course, you took it very seriously, you tried to retain all of the information to the point where you made sure you were prepared in an interview. And one of the things that I give you a tremendous amount of credit for was when we met. We met several times, and I would tell you, like, hey, you're going to reach out to these companies, and when you get the interview, you're going to be ready to talk about this, this, and this. And you were able to do it one on one with me, like very confidently. Can you talk about that process and I guess the interaction between you and I and doing like interview prep and how accurate, hey, these are the things that they're going to want to hear about from the course. Like, be ready to talk about them. Like, did that actually come to fruition when you were sitting in the interviews?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think over the span of, let's say, the last 10 months, um, it's the there were quite a few that asked about the course and some of the things that I learned. I remember in person interview had asked me, and I remember going through uh just some of the chapters that we covered, even down to, and it wasn't until I got to the mod rating that you told me to look into and look up. And when I, brought up their mod rating and, how it shows, they really care about, the safety of their employees, they kind of like were shocked, like, oh, you know about mod ratings? And I was just like, I got, I got a pretty good instructor, like I got pretty good guidance into this thing. So, that was something that kind of caught them off guard even. So I think this course and your tutelage, you know, not only prepares you, but I think it over prepares you just just based on their reaction. That was something that they just, didn't expect from, an entry level guy with no experience. But, you definitely can fortify uh the information going through that course 100%.
Yeah, so it's just one thing that I think is just so powerful that we were able to do, which was look at all these companies that you were interviewing with. Hey, what matters to them based on the way they market themselves? What can you ask them about? Right? And you were very well prepared with intelligent questions to ask them about themselves. And it did two things. Number one, it made it very apparent that you kind of knew what you were talking about, right? Even without experience. Somehow this guy knows about, our safety ratings, and somehow he knows about the contract types that we might be operating under, and you were prepared to ask those questions, because one of the best opportunities people have in an interview, and rarely do they take advantage of it, are, hey, do you have any questions for us? Oh, I just want,
Absolutely.
people say no, and they just kind of like put their hands up, like, please give me a job.
Yeah.
But if you can ask questions that shows that you're interested, that shows that you're knowledgeable, and maybe even shows that you're humble, what a
Right.
better person could there be for them to hire? Because what are they
Absolutely.
trying to do? They're trying to gauge, if you have no experience, are you invested?
Hmm.
What's the risk in bringing you on? Because there's a cost to bringing you on. And how
Absolutely.
green is green? Like, how much do I actually have to teach you from scratch? And you're able to communicate that stuff. And
Absolutely.
what I really loved about the last time that we spoke was you had a phone call when they were about to give you an offer, and they had told you how quickly they
Mhm.
wanted to get an offer out to you. What was that phone conversation like?
I actually ended up getting 2 offers 2 weeks ago. Um, the first offer, again, fantastic company, great company. And after so many applications submitted, after so many interviews, you get that first offer. My first instinct is to jump on it, jump on it, strike while the iron's hot. Um, reel in the fish while you got it. So, I ended up signing the same day that another company wanted to schedule an interview. Um, the first offer was a bit further. It was across the country from where I was, so I would have had to relocate. But the second company was right next door. Was a state neighbor to me, so I wanted to hear him out. Like you said, I got an 11-month-old. Uh, I got my girl at home, so I didn't want to venture out too far. So I wanted to hear him out. And again, after so many applications submitted, after so many interviews, um, I don't expect to get a second offer. Again, thanks to the course, thanks to, just that process of going through those interviews and going through the application process. And again, getting more efficient at, what I'm saying in those interviews and, hitting those points. I was able to get a second offer. And so the second company asked me, hey, I never, the recruiter was like, I've been working for 3 years as a recruiter. I've been staffing for this particular project for about 8 months. And this is the first time that I've had uh, the site manager call me right after an interview to move forward with the candidate. Usually they take a week, they want to interview other people. They kind of want to, screen it out. But, he said this is the first time that they, wanted to move forward immediately. Mind you, he already clocked out. He's on his way home. He's got about an hour and a half drive, but he's still on the phone, wanting to work it out with me, asking me, what is the first company offering? Because, we appreciate you being transparent about the offer. What are they offering you? And I told him. So he proposed a number. He told me their base salary. And then he said he was able to go, a bit higher than that. It still wasn't going to be quite as high as the first offer, but again, it's closer to home, so I'm open to it. But he said he just had to call the site manager, run it by them, see how they feel about it. He was going to call me back in 15 minutes. About 10, 15 minutes go by. He called me back and he's like, okay, so I was able to get them to agree to this number. Again, that wasn't as high as the first offer, but we can turn up the monthly per diem to this amount. So how does that sound? And when you add both of those together, it was quite a bit more than the first offer.
Yeah. So basically the benefits around the offer tilted it in the other direction, where the closer job was actually more money. And that's amazing.
It was a home run, honestly. The entire process, I don't think it couldn't have ended better. It really couldn't have ended better.
And what's crazy about that is, the two companies that you were talking to, their revenues like in the billions, right? This is not the small companies,
right?
That you would have, that some people may have thought. I mean, we were talking, I was telling you to apply to everybody because you want to get the at-bats and you want to get the confidence in speaking and, all of those things. But I think that there's a big, misnomer out there that, to get into the formal world of construction or the big boys, the big commercial stuff, you have to have a degree, right? Or you have to have the experience.
Right.
And that's really just not true. You know what I mean?
That's true.
And what was even funnier, now I've hinted a lot that like, hey, I know what the hell I'm talking about. And you and I talk and I kind of give you the answers to the test when you're going into these interviews. But I was wrong about something. And what I was wrong about, I am happy to be wrong about, because I was wrong about the starting salary that you were going to get offered by a lot. It's just funny because if somebody ranked all of the states and the incomes in those states, I think a lot of people would come back with Georgia being around the bottom, right? The bottom of the country. And on the website, if you look at the website, I've very transparently have said I started out at 50 to 75,000 was the range, depending on the market that you're in. And I've even heard of people getting up to 85 in the New York area, but that's New York. That's, different. That's totally different. I would have expected Georgia to be at the bottom of that spectrum, and it wasn't. And I don't want to say what your starting salary was here, but it is a lot higher than 50,000. And I just think, that is just amazing. And it just really speaks to, number one, the value that you're able to communicate for yourself, not just by taking the course, but you Rodney, have a lot of good qualities that are there. You just needed something to pair with it, right? Like who Rodney is really the star of the show. We just gave you some tools and some things to talk about, that really made you shine. And I think everybody has that inside of them, and everybody's capable of getting salaries like that. That's just the beginning, right?
Exactly.
Like, and I still die on the hill that in 3 years, 5 at the worst, you're going to be making over $100,000. You'll be the 6-figure construction guy. Listen, Rodney, I'd love to end on any advice that you might have for people that maybe grew up like you in Georgia, that don't know what they want to do, and they don't know if they want to go to college or what they want to go to college for, or maybe they are taking the scenic route like you did. Maybe they're in their mid to late 20s or even 30, and they're thinking about construction management, and that's why they're listening to this. What advice would you give to them about taking the course, not taking the course, and finding that new career path in construction?
I mean, at the end of the day, my advice, one thing that I've kind of been telling there's little cousins of mine, relatives, friends, just kind of around the way is skills pay bills. Skills pay bills. If you're considering construction management, that's a hell of a skill. That's a hell of a skill, and that's a hell of a skill to develop and to nurture and to work on. And from there, I think once you have a skill, once you have a knowledge base in a skill, that's a source of income that can never be taken away from you. Whether you want to go into construction management. The other thing I really like about the industry too is that they provide different pathways that you can go into. So you can go into construction management, and if you are just super interested in electrical work, there's a pathway for you with that. If you're more
Yeah, you could go.
interested,
You could go work for an electrical contractor. It doesn't have to be a GC. You could go there.
exact,
You could go work for a property owner or a developer, and focus on that.
right. Exactly. If you want to be more hands-on and kind of put parts together, you could kind of go the superintendent route. If you are more savvy with numbers and the cost of things, you can kind of go the estimating route. So it provides also a lot of different pathways for you to kind of, not only just feel like you're stuck in one thing, but you can kind of try different things out, or kind of get a sense of, specifically where you might want to take it. So I think it's a fantastic industry. It's a fantastic field, to go into. Even if I even thought about this while I was taking the course, there's a lot of skills that you develop, in construction project management, um, that apply to entrepreneurship. So if you want essentially a template to develop those skills. Again, contracting, working with subcontractors, talking to stakeholders, insurance, all of those things apply in an array of different aspects of life. So,
Yeah, I
you
mean,
know,
running a project is like running your own mini business.
exactly.
Truthfully, it's a little business project.
It
Really,
really
it is.
is.
And I think that I think as construction, blue collar world, I think Mike Rowe has done a great job at like promoting that. But I think most people, when they hear construction, they think boots and jeans and a tool belt, and you're turning a wrench in the field, making
Right.
good money and being noble and all those things.
Mhm.
And it's like that or entrepreneurship. Like there's no in between, and
Right.
there's a
Yeah,
huge in between.
it
We
is.
highlighted a bunch of them. There's a bunch of different project management roles. There's assistant project manager, project engineer, project coordinator, project manager, senior project manager. There's estimator, senior estimator, superintendent, senior superintendent. And then you could also get in a sales role or like business development where you're trying to win new work and get more clients. And then there's executive, there's layers of executive management and directors and, the C-suite, CEO, COO,
Yeah.
CSO, CIO, whatever C you can think of. And then there's entrepreneurship where you start,
Right.
where you start, your own business. So there are and then there's subcontractors and general contractors and manufacturers and yada, 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 developers and client representatives, almost like a real estate agent, but for, like if I do a job for Google or Bank of America or, insert 500 Fortune 500 company, there's just like we have real estate brokers to buy a house. Well, they have construction management brokers that basically act as a liaison between them and contractors, right? Like that's a role that nobody knows about. So it's I'm just echoing your point that getting in is the hard part. Once you're in, there are so many different paths that you can find that fits either your life or whether it's work-life balance, your skill set, what are you good at, or whatever you're passionate about. Maybe it's electrical, maybe it's paint, whatever,
Mhm. Right.
whatever it may be. Right.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I definitely appreciate that. Uh, so at the end of the day, Rodney, the the 449 to start the course, was it worth it?
Absolutely. 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 Yeah, I had a gut feeling like as soon as I saw that alert, that that Course Careers that came out with that, I was like, this is exactly what I was looking for. This is exactly what I was looking for. And I wasn't wrong. I wasn't wrong at all. It was absolutely worth it.